pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Christy, can we have a roll call, please?
Bierstead. Bjork.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Downing.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Odine.
Here.
Okay, next we have approval of the minutes from the July 23rd meeting.
I so move. Second.
First and second, questions? All in favor? We're gonna have to do a roll call, Christy. Can you please do that?
Bjork.
Yes.
Odine.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Morissette.
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Okay, next move on to approval of the bills, Mr. Carroll.
Mayor and council, I move approval for the payment of bills in the amount of $3,725,226.20, subject to council and comptroller. Second.
First and second on the bills. Any questions or comments? Christy, could we have a roll call, please?
Odine.
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Morissette.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Bjork.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next move on to public comments. Like always, everybody's got 2 minutes. If you want to come up, sign in, name, address, phone number. Thanks.
Benjamin Fox, 2529 Paul Avenue, POWEL. I want to thank the city and the city council and all your staff for the response to the storm damage this morning. It's kind of fun or interesting to watch how effectively, by funding and having good equipment, how fast you can recover from. I mean, it could have been worse, but it's amazing how fast these big trees disappear before the rest of the world even kind of wakes up. And, you know, power and all that kind of stuff. It's a compliment to your staff and policies and, you know, judicial spending of the government's money. The second item is that it's important to have things that memorialize tragedies in kind of strange ways and maintain them well. The item number 9, which you have, is just a simple request for some funds to fix some playground equipment. It may not seem like a large thing in your whole thing, but to the ones that affect, it's really important, because I don't think a parent that ever buries a child and has ever lives their life the same. And so I thank you for also making sure that those are well maintained and honored. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Patricia LaRue, River Falls. I believe in the science of climate change. I believe in the scientists who warn us of climate change, especially one particular scientist, my niece, Dr. Michelle LaRue, geospatial engineer, whose climate warming studies take place at Fort McMurdo in Antarctica. The movement to a carbon-free green energy is expensive, with citizens having to change long-held habits and with our policymakers to help move the needle in the right direction. I'm old enough to remember when automakers were fighting against mandatory seatbelts in new cars. They complained about how expensive it would be, yet approximately 16,000 lives are saved due to seatbelt usage. I remember when builders pushed back against smoke detectors and sprinkler system ordinances, again claiming the cost increase in home ownership or rentals would be substantial. Yet the risk of dying in a home fire is cut by 2/3 in homes with working fire alarms. Developing a climate change policy is more important than a monetary return on the investment. Why not start small? As a community, we are holding great hopes on the development of Man Valley, a perfect spot to give incentives to businesses who agree to invest in charging stations. By doing so, we encourage those employed in Man Valley companies to purchase EVs, knowing there will be a charging station for them when they get to work. Is installing charging stations more expensive than not? Sure. But so are seatbelts, so are smoke detectors, so is painting stripes on the highway to keep drivers on their own side of the lane. I was recently at Crystal Cave, and they have 4. Crystal Cave has 4. Thank you, Diane. Or Councilmember Odine. If this city balks at taking even a small step to encourage green transportation, it's very questionable if we have the leadership to truly tackle climate change at all. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm Kevin Juneau, a resident of the city who lives on Fremont Street, 639 Fremont Street for the record. And I'm faculty at the university in the conservation program who teaches the forestry courses. The current and many of the former sustainability and municipality interns that the city has employed have been my advisees or have at least taken classes with me in the conservation program. So professionally, I'm a PhD trained forest scientist, a certified ecologist with the Ecological Society of America, an active member of the Society of American Foresters, and one of the 2 Pierce County invasive species coordinators. I serve a number of roles in a few nonprofit conservation organizations in the region as well. I was also a member of the River Falls Tree Advisory Committee before it was disbanded earlier this year. So I have major concerns about the future of sustainability in the city as they pertain to the urban forests and the streetscapes. So I won't go into all of my professionally based concerns, but I did want to highlight 3 of them. So 1, the trees are unhealthy throughout the city. Many of the trees here have signs of disease, stress, and invasive species such as the emerald ash borer that make them more susceptible to storm damage. So the storm last night resulted in a number of these old and unhealthy trees to fall down. This is concerning to me because a dedicated urban forester could and should be proactive at recognizing these unhealthy trees and remove and replace boulevard and park trees before they damage property, such as cars, houses, road signs, power lines that we saw last night and this morning, or cause injury. Emergency removal of trees with the added infrastructural repair and replacement costs associated with damage increases the cost of urban forest management compared to proactive management. So 2, the city has made a commitment with the DNR to proactively manage emerald ash borer, and I believe one of the stipulations of the grant was that there would be a tree advisory committee involvement led by a dedicated urban forester.
15 seconds.
I'm no longer part of the discussions regarding EAB, so I'm unsure what the status of this grant implementation is currently. Beyond this grant's timeline, EAB will only get worse, and I'm concerned that without an urban forester, that things are going to become pretty terrible. I'll just wrap things up. So with the lack of a dedicated urban forester position and a tree advisory committee, I'm concerned that the urban forest will decline significantly in the very near future, as it already is. And most concerningly to me, become a hazard to human health and result in injuries to people or worse, death. The trees are already falling down during storms and causing property damage. It's only a matter of time before a greater tragedy occurs.
Good evening. My name is Lance Hovland. I live at 310 West Charlotte Street. And I'd like to thank the City Council and the city for signing the sustainability commitment in 2022 along with UW River Falls, the School District of River Falls, and the Chippewa Valley Technical College. As part of the university's commitment to sustainability, they are currently developing a climate action plan to provide a strategic framework to prepare for the local effects of climate change and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is an excellent opportunity for the city to work alongside the university in its efforts. Since much of the work overlaps, less resources will be needed to be spent by either party that way. Developing a citywide climate action plan in tandem with the university will help our community understand how to achieve the most cost-effective emissions goals while also meeting other goals, including sustainable economic development, equity, and resiliency. When the city hires a new sustainability coordinator, developing and implementing a climate action plan needs to be a top priority. Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Allison Page, 430 Crescent Street, River Falls. And I just stopped down tonight because I actually pretty much know everybody in this room. But I wanted you to be able to put the face to the name. I'm a candidate on the ballot this year for state assembly. So I'm just stopping in to sitting and listening on your meeting to see what issues you're facing as a community and make sure that you know who I am. And I'll leave some information with you. I put my cell phone number on it if there are any issues you'd like to talk with me about before the election. And then just as an aside, I'd like to say it is such a point of pride to live in this community where we are so very dedicated to doing things right and all the great things that we've done in this town. It's fun to brag about. So thank you. Is it okay if I just pass these out to you?
I just- Thank you.
My name is Carol Ackley. I'm a longstanding member of the River Falls community. I live in River Falls Township. I'm here to request information, updates, and transparency in the hiring process for the sustainability and conservation position. It has been more than 4 months since the shocking loss of Mike Noreen and its enormous impact on our community. His replacement will be challenging at best to find. Hopefully, we can find someone with his passion, work ethic, and community connections. As I mentioned at the last time I spoke to this council, it is critical to minimize the loss of momentum with the numerous initiatives and projects that Mike and his partnerships led. To name only a few, the University of Wisconsin River Falls, CVTC, the Kinney Corridor Collaborative, WestCap, Hope for Earth, Focus on Energy, Powerful Choices, the Kinney River Land Trust, the DNR, and many, many more. We are losing valuable time. As there has been no public follow-up on the plan to fill this critical position, I'm hoping that there is an encouraging update and that we, the people, will have an opportunity to provide input in this process and that there will be more transparency than there has been thus far. The valuable expertise in the partnerships that Mike developed and nurtured throughout his 15-year tenure are also an important asset in this hiring process. We hope you see it that way too. Please, let's work together collaboratively with transparency and purpose to fill this critical position with a qualified and hopefully local person and ensure a sustainable green future for all of us and generations to come. It's that important. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Dana Linscott. Last meeting, Administrator Simpson prefaced his rebuttal of my claims regarding the city's yard waste site pollution by saying he needed to be careful. He then proceeded to rebut my claim that leachate from the yard waste site drains into a spring-fed pond, which then drains directly into the Kinney by stating the compost site runoff does not drain directly into the Kinney. This was a carefully crafted rebuttal that was both technically truthful and extremely misleading. You should note that Mr. Simpson did not attempt to rebut my claims the site poses a serious health hazard to those who live nearby, or that the pollutants from the site end up in the Kinney untreated. These are serious allegations that should not be dismissed out of hand based on the administrator's inaccurate assurances. No business would be allowed to pollute the Kinney or spread dangerous biotoxins to residential neighborhoods. Don't you think this deserves your attention, despite the suspect assurances of Mr. Simpson? I would be happy to prove my claims if you will simply give me 15 minutes of your time. Come to the yard waste site. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I would be equally happy to provide an overview of the solutions other communities use to avoid these problems if you will allow me to do so at the next council meeting. This, of course, is not the most serious problem the city faces. Last meeting, city staff provided a presentation warning that hundreds of low-income housing units will be needed within the next 2 years. This will not be possible without citizen involvement. And citizen involvement will not happen without significantly better transparency by the city administration.
15 seconds.
Misleading statements and issue avoidance will not accomplish that.
Anybody else have anything?
Hello, my name is Mike Noreen, 409 North 4th Street. The city, like all of us, value transparency. So what I'm seeking is just that on the status of the Department of Energy Futures Grant that was written, and it's $500,000 for building capacity for the weatherization and beneficial electrification of low to moderate income homes. So what I'm seeking from you is a status update of that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm William Hanson, Town of River Falls. I'm here tonight to congratulate you on your stewardship of the Junction Falls Dam, Hydro, and Lake George. As we continue to expand our understanding of the importance of sustainability in the future of the world we are leaving to our children and grandchildren, our local production of over 1 million kilowatt hours of renewable electricity by our Junction Falls Dam and Hydro continues by far to be our largest local source of renewable energy. And Lake George, unique in the Kinney watershed, expands our area biodiversity. Thanks for your continuing responsible stewardship of the significant sustainability feature of our community, represented by our Junction Falls Dam, Hydro, and Lake George. I encourage you to continue to support and expand the local commitment to this sustainability. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything? Okay, move on to public hearing. We'll close the council hearing and open up a public hearing on ordinance 2024-04, amending the municipal code section 13.20.020-13.20.030 for water wells. This is the second reading and disposition. Is there anybody in the audience has anything to say about this? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and open up the council hearing, and I will take a motion on this.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I make a motion, we approve ordinance 2024-04.
Second.
First and second, questions, comments?
I guess I have just a quick question. I'm in favor of this and it makes a lot of sense, but I just want to know what negative impacts were considered as far as the water quality goes with this, and which ones were not, for example, and why?
Negative impacts, you mean regarding the private wells impact on our watershed, or our wellhead protections, or both?
Both.
Okay, so private wells, this would be granting a special exception to private wells, a limited amount of private wells that we currently have within the community. The primary issue is whether or not you can have cross-contamination or some kind of contamination based on the activities of the well. So chemical application or something within that well or the source that it's drawing from. But basically, the holes are all related to ours, even though the municipal wells are quite a bit deeper. So we looked at some of the watershed issues. And then we still have maintained the ability within the ordinance, if we determine that there's a negative impact on the quality or quantity of groundwater, then we can refuse to issue the permit. So that would allow us to have an expanded definition of what the impact would be. So it's something we haven't thought of now, but something that we become aware of that can impact in the future. You'd still have the ability for us to not allow those permits.
So proximity to our groundwater sources is part of that.
Yeah, again, the wells are not, they're not the same as a municipal well. The construction methods are similar, but you got much deeper wells and different kinds of protections, and certainly a lot more volume being pulled in most cases from, I don't think any of these wells are anything close to the impact on a water table or something like that. So you're primarily just looking at what kind of quality impacts it would have, not so much the quantity.
Okay.
Be hard to imagine, again, we can, if you're looking for a more precise impact analysis, that's something that we didn't do. We didn't say how many gallons this is pulling out, what does that do to our watershed, because it's not really comparable for volume of what a municipal well is.
Do we have any, how do I put this, testing methodology that we use similar to the CMAR for private wells? Other than what we know from the DNR testing type stuff?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand that question because the CMAR, I think you're referring to the wastewater, kind of how we do wastewater.
Yep.
So there'd be different battery of tests that we would do on a water well than on the discharge of the water.
So it's more based around state standards and DNR for a private well than it is, say, city standards then, right?
Correct. The
Okay.
private wells in Wisconsin don't have nearly the standards, at least my understanding of the laws for private versus public. The standard is quite a bit higher for our public wells.
So, okay, well, it looks like this will be improving our private wells and the safety standards, and I'm in favor of that. So, thank you, Mr. Simpson.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Okay, Christie, can we have a roll call, please?
Miller,
Yes.
York,
Yes.
Morset,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Odine,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, next move on to consent agenda. First is acknowledgement of the following minutes. The Park and Recreation Advisory Board of 6/19, the River Falls Housing Authority of 3/13, 6/1, and 7/10. 6/12. Oh, sorry, my bad, 6/12. The Bid Board of 7/9, Utility Advisory Board of 6/17, the West Central Wisconsin Biosolids Facility Commission of 6/20. Next one is a resolution approving a Safe Streets for All grant agreement with the Federal Highway Administration. Next one is a resolution authorizing submission of charging and fueling infrastructure grant application. Next one is a resolution applying for exemption from the county library tax. Next one is a resolution approving purchasing policy updates. Next one is a resolution authorizing the application of a cost share grant from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for the purpose of educating and eradicating aquatic invasive species. And last one is a resolution approving request for additional funding due to an unusual circumstance for Triangle's playground equipment repairs. And I am going to poll number 7. If anybody else wants to poll anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull number 5 and number 8.
I'll take a motion on the rest.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of consent agenda items 3A through E, 4, 6, and 9.
Okay,
Second?
Oh, second.
Second.
Sorry.
there you go. First and second on all that. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Christie, can I have a roll call, please?
Morset,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
York,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Odine,
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Okay, Scott, you pulled 5 and 8.
5 and 8. Number 5. First, I'd like to make a statement. There's a lot of people here today who are worried about the city's commitment to green energy and continuing while we look to fill our open positions. And I hope that this application for EV charging stations is a demonstration of our continued commitment to that process. So we've heard what you have said, but I hope you hear what we're doing, putting some meat behind what we say. The application process is the first step, and this is a little bit prior to what we normally would see. And my first, again, I'm in favor of this activity, but the process bothered me a little bit because we didn't have defined amounts, and we didn't have defined costs and some different things. In talking with staff, I understand the application process. And again, this is one step prior to what we're normally seeing. I just want to make a statement, and I think there might be some other comments, that this application process is great, gives us a chance to give reinforce the direction that staff feels that we want them to go. I am a big believer in sources and uses. Many staff people have gotten my comments and items sent back because they didn't have a sources and uses. And I want to know more in the next step about the actual amounts. And I know I even saw some today in talking with staff that we're starting to refine that. So I'm just trying to send the message that this is a little uncomfortable because this is not what we're used to for application process. This has nothing to do with the EV. This is about the process. And I'm going to have similar comments for number 8. And I'm okay with the way they're handling this. I just want to reinforce the fact that we have a fiscal responsibility as council people to understand what we're approving. And tonight, the scope of the approval is just to move forward with the application. And that's what I'm willing to do. So that's my only comment.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question. Mr. Simpson, regards to this resolution, how does this match up with like a formula? Like, you know, we move forward, we get a grant. How do we determine where it matches up with in the community? Could you give me an example of what that might look like in the future?
Well, I can talk about this specific application. So as Councilmember Morrissett's indicated, we're providing you more transparency earlier in the process. So we would, in the past, we've had grant applications worked farther into the application process before they've been provided to council, but we wanted to give council, frankly, an opportunity for a stop sign. So this is more of a stop sign moment than a green light, because there's the actual application process, then going through, a lot of these are negotiated awards or grants, so then you got to do the post award but pre-authorization or pre-awarding the money, and then there's also RFP processes involved with this. So there, you know, you're at step 1 of 15. So in this particular program, the federal government's only looking for very large projects. So a couple EVs doesn't do you here. EV stations are probably, at least from the math that we have access to, are about $50,000 per station when you do site planning, engineering, acquisition of equipment, installation. So the minimum grants under this is 500,000, and then they're an 80-20. The expectation by the federal government, as we understand it, is that the 20% is not provided by the local. It's provided by the provider of this or the person that you're going to acquire through the RFP process. So part of their equipment likely is to be covered by the grant, but then they're going to have to come up with their own equipment money. They may also go after tax credits then for that equipment too. So on like a $750,000 project, which would get you, you know, 14 to 18 charging stations across the city, the vendor would provide at least 20% of that match.
So is there a way that 20% a vendor could approach the city and say, we're interested in doing this?
We'll have to go through the kind of process laid out, and some of these are newer programs, so we'll have to wait for the Federal Highway Administration to say we're either going grants.gov or we're going a different process. Likely this is an RFP though. You'll likely have to do a competitive RFP. Kind of, if we're awarded, then we have to offer that out to these, you know, 5 or 6 vendors across the country that are doing this. And then they come in and provide us a proposal to do it at these locations. Does that answer your question?
It does. I understand what direction that you're defining as far as a formula goes, so I appreciate that. And I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Can I ask, are these charging stations, will they be for both city vehicle use and for outside residential uses? And if that's the case, is there a charge on this? So if somebody comes in and charges their vehicle for 10 minutes, there's, you know, you use your credit card and there's a fee on there, so.
Yeah, these are going to be for fee, open to the public stations.
Okay, because I mean, part of my concern in this, and I have a hybrid vehicle, so I mean, I understand the electric part of it, but of course, not having the gas tax means that our roads will suffer eventually down the road if you have only electric vehicles and if you don't have a method of collecting funds back. So I guess I'm okay if these are fee-based charging stations and
Yeah, and that's again, to emphasize where we are in the process, we're at the point where we wanted to understand if the council was a no on principle for the city being involved in the provision of EV charging stations. So this looks like the best opportunity for us. There are other opportunities for us. There's been some changes in state law. There's been more information available to us as an electric utility about some of the options that we have. Those aren't options that we're pursuing. This option looks like the best option for us right now to get some impact, but we understood there could be the opportunity for the council to say, we just don't want to be in the EV charging business. These are not for police cars and electric line trucks and city vehicle fleet. This is to spread charging stations across the community. And it's going to be highly competitive. And they're, 15 billion is going to go, 15 million, I guess, is the maximum grant. So that you can tell there'll likely be some places that go a little bit harder. And there'll probably be some generated through third parties that are kind of driving the bus for the cities. That's not the case. We don't have a vendor that's saying, here's what we need in order to get, we've asked some vendors for some prices to get an idea, but I suspect in some of these larger applications, there's going to be a particular couple vendors that are trying to work with folks to do this. And I'm not familiar enough with the program overall. This is a community-based program. But there's going to be other programs for kind of private sector installation at gas stations or traditional gas stations, I guess. So we have a lot more questions to answer than we have answers for you. What we're looking for in the resolution is to understand if you're okay with us proceeding through the application process to kind of work through some of these details. And then of course, if we were to accept the grant, that's a whole nother process where you'd have an understanding of the detail before we accept the grant.
so with what you just said there, Scott, that means if we did apply for this grant and we're awarded it, we wouldn't have to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not obligated to accept grants that are awarded. We would maintain our ability to make sure it still makes sense to us, so that there's not some new rule that's put in place with the with the award that is too hard for us to overcome. And also, if all the estimates and the equipment costs are way exceed what we anticipate under the current information, and you start to flip it and it's say 50-50 instead of 80-20, and all of a sudden there's a local match, that's a whole different ballgame then. But that's what I am saying is we're not obligated to take the grant just because we're awarded.
Mm-hmm. And is there a lot of effort left yet to apply for this grant?
Significant, yes.
So there's a lot of effort yet. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a quick comment that I appreciate you bringing this to us early, and I know that the city's applying for federal money is a relatively new thing, and I know that it's significantly more hurdles to jump over or crawl under with dealing with the federal government. Also, I want to, just a side note to Mr. Bjork's comment, if you have an electric vehicle, it's an extra $175 for yearly registration. So and that's meant to account for the gas tax you're not paying.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else have anything on 5?
Mr. Mayor, I have something too.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a quick recap, which is just to say I appreciate where Councilmember Morsett's coming from in terms of making sure we understand the process and the skepticism. This is kind of an interesting thing because there are areas in which the city, along with federal money, has the ability to like drive some innovation where the marketplace is seemingly not quite there. And I think this could be a really great thing, but it's only step 1 of 15. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. So this should fulfill to skeptical residents, just as a quick reminder of our commitment towards green energy and green energy solutions when we can find ways to make them applicable in our climate and in our community. So because of that, I think this is a really good program, and I appreciate bringing it forward. There is a lot of complexity. I talk a little bit with folks in the EV side, and they don't have this thing figured out at all. There's a lot just for the actual provider side and payment side that is really complex, and it's going to get better, and it's going to get hammered out as we go, but it's still kind of a new thing. And so I just appreciate the city being able to engage in a process in which you don't know where it's going to go, and then having the trust in council to make wise decisions as we move forward.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, I think we need a motion on the table.
Yep.
Should have probably done that earlier, but I make a motion, we approve the resolution authorizing submission of charging and fueling infrastructure grant application.
Second.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay, Christie, roll call, please.
Carol,
Yes.
York,
No.
Morset,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Odine.
Yes.
Okay, and then number 8.
You want me to do number 8
Yeah,
for you?
go ahead.
Okay, this is gonna sound like a repeat, but again, we're asking for an application here for the authorizing of this cost share for the Wisconsin DNR, educating and eradicating aquatic services. Part of me feels that this is better suited for the KCC. I know that organization has got some challenges in front of it right now. And again, we have a broad range of what we could apply for, what can be applied for, what can be awarded, and what that means for the city. I just, because it's an application, I'm comfortable with it. But again, these are processes that are maybe not as comfortable for me, but I understand why they're coming to us now and how they're happening. So with that, I will make a motion to approve the authorization for the application of a cost share grant from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for the purpose of educating and eradicating aquatic invasive species.
Second.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I do want to point out that this one is a lot clearer path. So we're probably not on step 1 of 15. We're probably on step 1 of 3.
Okay.
If I'm giving you an analogy.
Sure.
We're more familiar with the DNR. We're more familiar with these projects. We have a better understanding of our competitiveness, which is probably high. We know what we're trying to get rid of, and we have help from UWRF to do it. So I don't want to match those two in your mind of this has a lot more likelihood that it will go smoothly. It will not be a big deal, and we will go forward with it. Whereas I can't imagine a scenario where there's not some formal approval of the charging EV grant. Whereas this one, you are allowing us to apply and meet the financial guarantees. I'm understanding based on what you've said that there's different level of comfort amongst the council about us doing so. But I want to make sure you don't think those two are equal on the scale of trajectory. This is not quite as ahead. This is not quite as much ahead notice as what we think we can get this grant. We think we have a path forward to do it. And it's important. Staff is recommending it's an important thing for us to get on because of the identification of this particular species there. We think now's a good time to do it. Does that make sense?
I just like to comment that this is, an entirely different way of trying to protect our environment.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on 8? comments, questions? Okay, so we got a first and a second. Christie, could we have roll call, please?
Downing,
Yes.
Bjork,
Yes.
Odine,
Yes.
Miller,
Oops, she said yes, but her mic was off.
Yes.
There you go.
Carroll,
Yes.
Morset.
Yes.
Okay, and I pulled number 7. After reading through this and having a few discussions with City Administrator Simpson, there's just a couple things I want to get clarified, so I'm going to pull this and give it back to staff to have them clarified. It talks about a budget manager. I got a general idea what a budget manager is, but I'd like to have it in here a little bit better what a budget manager really is and who they are and who they would be. And then the only other thing in here I was interested in was for real estate, I prefer if it's just City Administrator Simpson signing real estate contracts. So that's why I'm gonna send it back to them to get a little more clarity around that. I don't know if anybody on the council had any other questions or concerns on anything in this. Otherwise, I'll just have them look at those 2 things and try to clarify them for me. Everybody, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with
Okay.
that.
Okay. Okay. So we'll move on to Administrator's report. And Scott, if you have something for us, or if anybody has anything for Scott?
Yeah, Glen Park is closing for the season. Glen Park Pool is closing for the season. The splash pad is likely to remain open into September. It's weather dependent. We'll try to balance people's desire to be out there and do it with the weather and keeping it maintained. I know we at some point might get to wetsuit weather, and then I suspect we'll pull it back, even if we can keep it warm enough at night. We are closed. City offices are closed Labor Day, September 2nd. September 7th is the Community's Art on the Kinney Festival. Information on that event, it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Along the Kinney, and features 70 plus artists, children's art, musical venues, and food. And if you haven't been to Art on the Kinney, I highly recommend it. It's pretty nice time of year to be strolling along the Kinney, and you get to enjoy the beautiful nature and the beautiful art. There is a website for that. It's excuse me, River Falls CAB. So it's riverfallscab.org/art on the Kinney. September 27th and 28th is the 2024 Bacon Bash. Festival hours at Heritage Park are Friday, September 27th, 4 to 10:30 p.m. Saturday, September 28th is 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. And then there's the official Bacon Bash car cruise on Main Street, Sunday, September 29th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can visit rfchamber.com if you want to learn more about that event. I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Anybody got anything for Scott? Okay, we'll move on to the Comptroller's report.
The Comptroller's report for July 2024. General fund revenues through the end of July were $6,015,331, or 44% of total budgeted revenues for the year. Revenues in July included $50,188 for public works charges. This included $50,000 for the sale of one of the city's snowplow trucks, $11,883 for swimming pool fees, and $20,664 for vehicle registration fees. Expenditures through the end of July were $7,540,526, or 55% of total budgeted expenditures for the year. So as of July 31st, 2024, net expenditures over revenues were $1,525,195.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, next I got a proclamation recognizing the University of Wisconsin River Falls 150th anniversary this year. So whereas, following the petition of more than 1,000 residents in the St. Croix River Valley and supported by funds donated by the citizens of River Falls and surrounding communities in April of 1874, construction began in River Falls of the 4th State Normal School, signifying the start of this institution's 150-year partnership with the city of River Falls. And whereas Over the course of its 150-year history, the University of Wisconsin-River Falls has evolved to become a premier comprehensive university, having granted degrees to more than 60,000 graduates over more than 10 generations. And whereas UWRF is dedicated to fulfilling its mission to prepare students to be productive, creative, ethical, engaged citizens and leaders with an informed global perspective in more than 70 areas of study and offering degrees at the associate, bachelor's, master's, doctoral, and education specialist levels. And whereas the university is regarded as one of the key socioeconomic drivers in the city of River Falls and the St. Croix Valley. Whereas on September 2nd, 1875, UWRF had a dedication ceremony and commenced their first classes on campus the next day. Now therefore, I, Dan Tolan, Mayor of the City of River Falls, do hereby recognize the important impact UWRF has had on the City of River Falls for 150 years. We'd like to welcome the students back to campus and proclaim their first day of school Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024 as University of Wisconsin-River Falls 150th Anniversary Day. Okay, and then I have one appointment I'd like to make. I'd like to appoint Phil Galley through May of 27 to the Park and Rec Advisory Board.
I make a motion, we accept the mayor's appointment.
Second.
Question or comments on the appointment? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Christie. Can I roll call, please?
Bjork,
Yes.
Odine,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Morset,
Yes.
Downing.
Yes.
Okay, and before we adjourn, I have a couple feel-good moments to share with everybody. So back in, it was on the 14th, 15th. Now I can't remember the exact date. We had our community appreciation event. We had over 1,000 or over 1,100 people join the city for food, games, live music, and more. And I'd like to thank everybody in the community for coming to this and sharing with us. And I want to thank the staff for all the hard work they put in and put on a great community event. I hope everybody could make it that wanted to come. The other thing was recently city staff were able to get a first glimpse of the UWRF Science and Technology Innovation Center during a tour of the facility while it is still under construction. UWRF does a lot for this community, and we're happy to be able to support them and continue to do their part in making the city a great place to live and go to school. And the last thing was, I'd like to congratulate River Falls Police Department Officer Chris Gottfriedson, who retired early this month after more than 26 years with the department. Officer Gottfriedson was known as Officer G by the students who acted with him during his time as a school resource officer. Thanks to Officer Gottfriedson for his decades of service to the River Falls community. And I would like to give a shout out to the city staff and the roads work guys today and Erica. You guys did a great job in cleaning up the city today. You've done a wonderful job. You're out there right away. And I'm sure the city appreciates it as we all do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, or sorry, Christie?
Odine,
Yes.
Downing,
Yes.
Morset,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Bjork.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.